What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Chaos and Company. Today, it's going to be me, Scott, and our good friend B. We're going to be talking about some haunted objects today. But before we get started, I do want to kind of like tell a story real quick. I've been really meaning to like tell this story on stream, but I just haven't found like a really good place to like tell it, right? So I'm just going to tell it here. So I heard this story not too long ago. It's a story that actually comes from Mexico, and I don't know if many of you know, but in Mexico, they really, really, truly believe in witches, right? So this story is somebody that actually says that they lived through this, right? I'm not denying or anything, but I just thought it might be fun to tell it. Okay, so the story goes like this, right? This person, right, has a cousin who's married to somebody, and they just recently had a newborn, and this newborn is 1 or 2 weeks old, right? And their aunt ends up inviting them for a festival that this little pueblito is gonna have, right? Like this little like town. They're gonna end up having like this nice, really festival, and that small town is heavily religious. So they got invited to it. The cousin and the wife, right, with the newborn, thought, oh, this would be a good opportunity to go there, see the priest and have them, bless our son. So that's what they ended up doing. They ended up going to the festival, right? However, before they even got there, the husband ended up just getting plastered, right? He got super, super drunk, completely forgot that they were supposed to go and meet the priest, right? So basically afterwards, right, they're kind of having fun. They're having a really good time at the festival, right? It's kind of, starting to get sundown, and three elder women kind of come in, right? And as they come in, you can kind of sense, right, the vibe change, right? And they ended up sitting all the way in the back, right? They ended up sitting all the way in the back, and the type of food that they ended up grabbing was salt chicken, right? Salted chicken, right? And fruit. And basically, right, as soon as they got there, they didn't think too much of it. They kept partying, right? The husband blacked out completely. And the aunt kind of comes up to them and tells them, hey, I don't want to offend you or anything, right? But you have a newborn, okay? And I really, really do think you guys should leave. And she goes, but why? You just invited us. Like, why are you asking us to leave, right? Like, that's like messed up. And she says, around here, right, there's well known to have, it's a well known place for witches to be here, right? And she goes, one of my mother-in-law is one of them, and she is the one sitting in the back. And I've also noticed them eyeing your baby. And she goes, no, that's crazy. Whatever, right? And but after a while, she kind of started getting that anxiety of like, okay, maybe this is true, right? Maybe, I should listen, right? And she tries to wake the husband up. He wakes up. She tells him, what his aunt just told him, right? And he goes, no, they're just superstitions, whatever, just do this, right? And they stay there for a little bit longer, and like, I guess her motherly instincts kind of kicked in. She's like, no, we gotta go. Like, I can't, I don't feel comfortable anymore. Like, let's leave, right? So the wife, the husband, their uncle, and the person that ended up telling the story all went on the truck, and they ended up just taking off. And it was a three hour car ride, right? And through the forest, once it got really, really dark, out of nowhere, they started hearing like a bunch of noises, and it was echoing all throughout their whole entire, vehicle. And they were like, what is this? And then out of nowhere, there were three balls of flame, right, that ended up appearing. and they got really close. And in Mexico, it is said to, like, whenever there's, like something like that kind of around you, that you're supposed to like cuss them out, right? Like be super rude to them, right? So that's exactly what the uncle started doing. He just started just mouth mouthing at them, started yelling at them, telling them to go away, right? And the cousin, the person telling the story, ended up joining them, and the baby's father also ended up joining them, and the balls of flames ended up just basically taking off, right? So they ended up getting to the uncle's house, and the uncle said, "Hey, listen, from whatever we ended up experiencing, I really, really do think that we should all just sleep here tonight, right? I don't think you guys should go home." And the baby's dad was like, no, I gotta, we'll just go, we'll just leave, right? But in reality, it was because he had a soccer game the next morning. So he really just wanted to get to a soccer game. So he was like, no, it's okay. We'll go. We're good to drive. We'll end up making it home. No worries. Everything will be fine, right? So that's exactly what they did. And they ended up going home, right? So once they ended up getting home, they went to bed, right? They put the baby on the bed. And basically the next morning, right, the dad ended up getting ready for the soccer game, right? So basically he ended up, kissing his wife goodbye and saying bye to the baby, and he left, right? He left like super, super early morning, right? I believe he said it was before the sun came up. So after a while, right, the mom woke up, right? Now it's really early morning. The mom woke up and she couldn't find the baby. And she got really, really mad because she thought her husband just took a newborn, right, without any food, anything, to a soccer game. So she got really, really frustrated. And she started calling him, but he didn't answer. And she kept calling him. And she's looking for the baby throughout this whole entire house. And she can't find the baby, and she's freaking out. She's extremely upset because in her mind, she really does think the father ended up taking a newborn to a soccer game. And she's like, how could somebody do this? That's so irresponsible, yada, 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 right? So the husband, right, finally finished the soccer game. He noticed that he has a bunch of calls from the wife, right? And it's unusual for her to be calling him that much. So he gets scared, right? So he rushes home. When he rushes home and enters the house, as soon as that she sees that he doesn't have the baby, she just breaks down crying, just absolutely in tears. She's freaking out. She doesn't know where the baby is. He doesn't know where the baby is. So they end up calling the whole entire family. Everybody goes in there. They're searching for this baby throughout the whole entire house from, top to bottom. And finally, right, they end up going into this bathroom, right? This bathroom they rarely use, right? It's down in the basement. So they end up going there and they find the baby right next to the toilet. And the mom just starts just absolutely crying, right? She's like, just like she's crying so like hard that there's no sound coming, just absolutely tears, right? And they basically ended up having to call a pediatrician, right? They tried to call the ambulance. The ambulance was going to take a really long time. So they called a friend that was really nearby that was a pediatrician, and he came by and took a look at the baby, right? And before he got there, they ended up noticing a bunch of bite marks, like tiny, tiny bite marks all around the baby. And when the pediatrician got there, he ended up taking a look at the baby, and he said that the baby ended up dying from loss of blood, right? And they ended up seeing that, he was bitten everywhere. He also said, it was from the traumatic shot, but mostly from loss of blood. So the mom's just absolutely devastated. The dad's absolutely devastated, right? They end up planning a funeral for the baby. So on the funeral, right, for them to give him a send-off is you, on their burial, you put a something, right? A possession of theirs, right? And the baby was very, very young, so he didn't have that many possessions, but he definitely had toys, right? So the dad tells the cousin that tells the story. He goes, "Hey, go to the house and grab just a bunch of his toys and bring him here, right? We'll end up leaving them. We'll end up leaving them here for him, right?" So that's what the cousin does. He goes back to the house, right? And as soon as he opens the door, he hears a woman just yelling, right? Just absolutely yelling, just being like, "Help me, help me. I'm trapped. Help me. Get me out," right? Absolutely yelling, right? And there's should be nobody in the house. So the dude goes, "Oh no, bro, the devil's here." Like, he just leaves. He takes off, right? He just takes off back to the funeral. And he ends up telling, his uncle, and his uncle goes, "Oh, she's still there. She's trapped, right? The witch is trapped." And he ends up, grabbing everybody that believes in this, right? And the people that don't just stay in the funeral, and they all just take off to the house, right? To find her. And sure enough, when everybody got there, they can hear the woman just yelling, "Help me, I'm trapped, help me, get me out," right? So they start searching the house. They start searching the house from top to bottom. And they end up finally hearing the screams coming from a closet, right? It was a wooden wooden like closet, right? It wasn't like a wall closet. It was like a kind of like a, God, how would you say that?
Like a dresser?
Yeah, a dresser. It was like a dresser, right? So like it had the doors closed, right? Things like that. So it was like tall, had a dresser, like you open the both doors, right? And it would be right there. You would hang your clothes there and so on and so forth, right? And they hear the just like, the voice coming from this dresser. So they open it. When they open it, a cat with a woman's body comes out. I know it's weird, but that's literally how it says. Now,
What does that
I'm
mean?
I'm sorry, I can't really explain it because I'm translating this, right? Like I'm translating because this story I ended up hearing it in Spanish, so I'm
Spanish.
translating it. Yeah, and I'm translating it. So I don't know what that means, but he said that a cat with a woman's body came out of the dresser, and she was she was the one yelling, and the voice came from that cat. So they ended up just like stomping the cat. They ended up like impaling it and stuff like that, right? And they ended up grabbing the cat because they didn't think it was dead, and they took it to the woods, right? They took it to the woods and they lit it on fire. And when they lit it on fire, the body ended up transforming into an older woman. So afterwards, right, everybody went back to that, that small town, right? Because they heard that there were three witches. They only found one, so they were trying to find the other two. So she ended up going. So they went to go talk to the aunt that ended up telling them to basically like leave, right? So that's exactly what they ended up doing. They went to go talk to her. She's like, "No, I can't. Like, I can't talk to you. It's not safe." And they go, "What do you mean? What? Why is it not safe?" And she goes, "Well, I found out that my mother-in-law ended up dying. She ended up getting burned alive in the forest." And they tell her the story, right? And she just couldn't believe it, and she's like, "Oh my god, I heard, but I didn't think it was real that she was actually one of them." And they go, "We need to find the other two," right? So she tells him, "Look, if you go up the mountain, right, you're gonna have to hike up a little bit, but there should be a house up there, and right there you'll end up finding them." So that's exactly what they did. They ended up grabbing everybody, right? And sure enough, they ended up trying to go find the witches. And they found the house, right? After a while, they found the house, but there was nobody there. It looked like it was vacated. It looked like they grabbed everything and left, right? But then later on, the aunt ended up saying that that she ended up seeing her mother-in-law again in one of the festivals, and the three witches were still there. So she somehow didn't actually die, and those three are still there, and they kind of go into the festivals just for chicken and fruit whenever they end up getting hungry. Anyways, that was a story I really wanted to tell on stream. I wasn't able to, so um, I decided to do it on the podcast anyways. But I thought it was kind of wild though. But yeah, I did have to translate that story though from Spanish to English. But I thought it was pretty interesting.
No, I mean like I know there's like this. I don't know if it's a revival or if it's just because it seems bigger because of social media of, but like like quote unquote witchcraft that I see sometimes people talk about on like Instagram. I don't know if you ever see it on TikTok, but like I don't really buy into that. But like when people talk about like stuff like that from more like places that have religions and practices that predate like colonialism and stuff like that, like I am very much more inclined to believe that it's real. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, no, and that's what like kind of like took me back because I was like, dude, like again, like I said, back in Mexico, I know they definitely do. Like, there's a lot of places that definitely believe in witches, right? And it's also like a main thing, right? Where like like I don't want to get into like religion or anything, right? But like it's a main thing for them to like baptize their kid as soon as possible because basically it's said that once they're baptized, like no harm like that would come to them, right?
Right.
Just because like I don't actually I don't know 100% why, but I know that's one big part on why they do it so young, right?
Well, I
And
I I know in like Catholicism and Christianity, like once a baby's been baptized, they can go to heaven
no,
if
no, no, no.
they pass. Well, I'm just like talking about like, because if you start talking about like witches and stuff like that, it's like soul manipulation and things like that too, you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, yeah. No, I was just gonna say like I don't know if like it's like once they're baptized, right, and things like that, it might like affect the blood that they're kind of going after. But no, like I definitely know that back there, they 100% like just deeply, deeply do believe in that kind of stuff, right? And I mean, you'll end up seeing also videos here and there too from over there where it's like, it's like, oh, I ended up seeing a witch and, with a baby and, in the cemetery, right? And this and that, and like them trying to like help the baby and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's like, I know it's a really big thing back there. And the reason why I wanted to tell it too was because like the guy that told that story lived that tale. It wasn't like
Right.
he heard it from somebody, and no, like it was actually he lived it. He was there, right? And till this day, he still like deeply believes that all three of them are still alive and roaming around. It's just, I don't know. I thought it was crazy. I thought it should be interesting. So hey, I ended up sharing it. But let's let's get into
The topic
some
at
haunted,
hand.
yeah, haunted objects here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get into some spooky haunted objects. Okay, so like I said, I do. So like I've told you guys, I do truly do believe in this. I'll try to be as respectful as I possibly can. Right. So the very first thing, right? If we're gonna be talking about haunted objects or possessed objects, whatever you want to call them, we definitely got to talk about some of the big ones out there, right? Not the scary big ones, which I'll kind of steer away from, but the big ones. Well, I mean, all of these are scary. All of these are scary. I'm not trying to disrespect, right? All of these are scary, but the big one, and it went Hollywood too, is Annabelle. Okay, so For those of you that have seen Annabelle, Annabelle is one of my favorite movies, right? One of my favorite horror movies. I love all three of them. Or four? No, three. Three, right?
I have no idea how many there are now.
There's Annabelle, Annabelle Creation, Annabelle Turn Comes Home.
Yeah, I've heard of those three for sure.
Okay. Anyways, those are the three I've seen. Those are the three I fell in love with. So the true story of Annabelle, it actually ends up starting with a girl. I don't remember exactly the location, but I
I
do
think it
know
was
she was a nurse.
L. I don't know. For some reason, I always remember it as being LA, Southern California somewhere. I might be wrong though.
I could have. I thought it was Texas, but I didn't want to say.
Uh,
But anyways, I do know that she was a nurse. Okay, and her mom ended up gifting her this Raggedy Ann doll, right? As soon as she became a nurse. So she would always end up, having this Raggedy Ann doll in her room. Whenever she would leave, right, she would end up leaving her on the bed with her arms spread out and her legs forward, right? But whenever she would come home, they would actually be in a different position. She would either have her arms crossed, she would either have her legs crossed, sometimes both, right? And she kind of thought it was a little weird, right? But she didn't think too much of it, right? So they ended up kind of, experiencing some weird things throughout, right? Where she would end up kind of, feeling something. And then when she would wake up, she would end up seeing that the doll would be staring straight at her, right? And again, she thought it was really weird. But one morning, for some reason, she's never done it. She ended up bringing her to breakfast. She ended up bringing her to breakfast, and basically she said,
really quick, was it like breakfast at like in the rest or in the apartment, or was like a breakfast at a restaurant?
breakfast in the apartment. She ended up
Okay.
bringing her to breakfast in the apartment. And at the time, she was living with another roommate. She was also a nurse. And she basically said, "Oh, she's having breakfast with us today, right?" And I don't quite recall what happened, but something happened that made both of them look at each other, right? And they kind of saw that there might be like something, right? Like a spirit in this doll. So the roommate basically said, "Hey, listen, I have a medium. Let's bring her over and let's see if we can talk, right? With whatever it's inside the doll." So she agreed, right? And she said, "Let's do it." And basically, right, they ended up bringing the medium. They ended up talking to doll. They ended up finding out that, the doll, the they ended up finding out that what was inside, it was a spirit of a little girl, of a 6-year-old little girl. Her name was Annabelle. And later on, they also ended up finding out that Annabelle was real. She ended up dying near their apartment by basically a car accident. So they basically noticed that there was something in this doll, right? And once they ended up talking to it, like a lot of the things became a lot more noticeable. So, for example, they would leave her in the bed, but they would also find her when they came back home. They would find her in the living room or in the kitchen. And one day, they ended up finding her fully standing up with her arms out in the living room. And when they ended up walking in and ended up seeing that, she ended up just dropping. Now, the roommate, I believe he either had a fiance or a boyfriend. I'm not 100% sure. I'm telling this story based off memory, so if I get a couple things wrong, I apologize. But the roommate's boyfriend or fiance didn't believe right, didn't believe. And he would just say, no, it's a stupid doll. No, there's nothing there. It's all made up. You guys are making it up. This and that. One day he ended up staying over at the apartment with them. And in the middle of the night, he ended up waking up because in his dream he was suffocating. Somebody was on top of him, strangling him. So when he woke up, he ended up seeing Annabelle at the foot of the bed, staring at him. And he ended up having markings around his throat. And he ended up grabbing Annabelle and saying, "You're just a doll. You can't hurt me." And at that moment, when he ended up doing that, 6 cycle slashes went through his body and he started bleeding. Now, when this happened, the roommate and also, the girl that ended up owning, right, Raggedy Ann, ended up starting to think, okay, maybe this is not just a spirit. Maybe this is something else. And they ended up looking for help. And they ended up finding it with the Warrens. They came in, and I don't remember if they said they exorcised it or not, but basically
No.
they ended up taking it from their possession.
I do remember that part. They
Okay.
tried to exercise it, but were unable to.
Were unable to. So
Yeah.
they ended up taking it from their possession, right? They ended up putting it in this box that was, the wood was blessed. And I believe inside also had Bible scriptures, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And when they were taking it home, Ed almost ended up dying because they almost ended up crashing. And he says that before that happened, the thing he ended up seeing was Annabelle's eyes looking at him. So they ended up surviving. They ended up bringing Annabelle to their house, and they continue to have, priests blessing it. But there's also a story that Ed ends up telling, and that is that I believe it was a priest, right? When they first ended up getting Annabelle, a priest came in, and he also didn't believe. And he basically talked down to Annabelle. And on the same road that Ed almost crashed, he almost died. And he also says that the last thing he ended up seeing before he ended up crashing and almost dying were Annabelle's eyes. So I apologize if I missed a couple things from the story. I was telling that based off memory. If you guys know any details I missed, cool. But yeah, bro, like that honestly
Yeah,
gave me a
let
little
us
bit
know
of,
in the comment section for anything that we mess up in the video.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, talking about that gave me a little bit of chills there. But yeah, I do believe she's still in
Their museum,
the
yeah.
museum, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
actually, now that we're talking about that, I ended up seeing a video not too long ago that I think ended up blowing up on TikTok, where I guess, the people that end up owning the Conjuring house, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, they, I guess, ended up posting a video of them taking Annabelle out of her box, right? Out of her box, and basically bringing her into the house. And like people just like lost their mind. They were like, no, like how could you do this and this and that? And I was like, I'm pretty sure that she's still in that house. I don't think Ed has given her away to anybody. And I believe they also said that like before they go, they were gonna release her for the people that don't believe, right? But yeah, no, it ended up being fake. Yeah, they don't have her at the Conjuring house. They ended up having a replica of her and the box that she's in.
Is it
But
like the movie replica or like the actual?
um no, it's like the actual, yeah, the actual.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned it, but the movie version is completely different than the actual one.
Yeah, no, that's why I said like it was a
Oh,
Raggedy Ann doll at the beginning.
yeah,
Um, it's the movie one. It's a porcelain doll.
right.
If you didn't know the difference. But yeah, no, that's a good thing too. But yeah, no, dude, I don't know if any of you ended up seeing that that video. That have you seen it?
No, I have. I know that there was like some marketing material for The Conjuring where they went to the Warrens Museum and saw the Annabelle doll, but I don't remember ever seeing anything in that regard, of them taking her out and all that. So,
Yeah, no, yeah, no, they apparently did, but afterwards they said it was fake, or I think in the video it said it was fake, but people didn't see it and they just freaked out that it's like, how could you do that? Because for those of you that don't know, we'll kind of be talking about it a little bit, but the Conjuring House is a real place. I know it's in the movie, um, and stuff like that, but it is a real place. But it is a lot, a lot different in real life than in the movie. But yeah, it's just like people freaked out that they ended up doing that. But yeah, no, I thought it was pretty, an interesting thing to talk about here, since I didn't, yeah, I saw it like not too long ago. But yeah, no, bro, honestly, that gave me a little bit of chills. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. Like just talking it, like, but again, if you haven't seen the movies, highly recommend it. They they are a lot different, than um what actually happened in real life.
right.
Also, speaking of which, he there's another story that Ed tells about Annabelle, and that is that so actually there's multiple stories about her, but so apparently, right, there was a couple that ended up coming to the museum, right?
I think I know this one.
And the guy didn't believe in Annabelle. The girl did. But the guy, as soon as he saw her, he ended up staring into her eyes, talking down on her, things like that. Ned said, "Hey, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't provoke her." And he's like, "No, this isn't real. This is all fake. This is like, I don't believe in any of this, right?" And I think he said that he ended up hitting the box. Don't quote me on that. I could be absolutely 100% be mistaken that, but I believe he ended up hitting the box. Now, I guess on the way home, they ended up crashing, and both of them unfortunately ended up dying on that same day. There's another one that he ends up telling about a cop. So he ended up coming in, he was looking around, right? He was still in his like police uniform. Why he was there, I don't quite remember what he said, but what I do remember is him looking around and then stopping where Annabelle is. And he stopped and looked at her, right? And he said, this cop have seen action, right? He's been on the duty on the force for some time, right? Um and he was a really tough guy, and I guess like they might have known each other, but Ed had to go and talk to the priest, right? So he said, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna leave you here alone. Please don't touch anything," right? So he went outside, right, and he's talking to the priest, and the cop went out of the room, right, and passed him. And Ed says that he was basically pale as a ghost. He was so scared, right, that he basically just said good night. He basically just said good night and left. And Ed said, "I didn't have to go into the room. I knew exactly what happened. And he goes, he ended up touching the box. And sure enough, when I went inside, everything was just everywhere. It just looked like, just a bunch of stuff was just thrown all over the room. And he goes, he ended up, you know, trying to open the box. And I was just like, dude, like in order, like I don't know, like I wouldn't, again, I wouldn't mess with any of that. But if somebody told me, hey, don't touch anything, because it might have something, I'm definitely not doing that, bro. Like 100%. No matter how much money you give me, I am not doing that.
I mean, that's almost kind of like human nature, though. Like, we're told not to do something, so we do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Um.
guess if you don't really believe in that kind of stuff, like, I think if you believe in that kind of stuff, you won't do it. But if you don't, I think you'd have a much easier time doing it than, say, somebody who does, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, I guess that's true. But like that's always been my thing though. Like for example, right? Like if I go to another like country or anything like that, right? And they tell me, "Hey, like don't do that. There, that causes bad luck or bad spirits." Like obviously I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be as respectful as possible, right? But I know some people are
Right.
like, "That's superstition. No, I don't believe you." And then one thing leads to another.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one we'll end up talking about, which I've been mentioning a lot, is the Conjuring House. Now, again, for those of you that don't know, the Conjuring is a real place. Um,
Well, the
or the
events in
house,
the
yeah,
house.
the events in the house. Well, the events from the movie are completely different. Let's go ahead and
Right,
start
right.
there. Let's go ahead and start there. So, in the movies, right? I believe the name is Beth Bathsheba.
I, I
Bathsheba.
I haven't seen those movies in years. I'd be the
Okay.
wrong person to ask.
Sorry if I missaid that name, but the witch, right? That is apparently supposed to be in the house. Basically, there's a witch, right? That, if I'm remembering correctly, I've seen the movie like a while ago, but if I'm remembering correctly, this witch basically ends up cursing the house, right? Because she ends up yeah, she ends up cursing the house, right?
Yeah, she was like doing something in like the woods, and then the towns, or well, the house was like more secluded from like the rest of the town that was nearby. And I think she was like kidnapping the kids of the town for her rituals or something. And then they found out, so they all came to, kill her. But before they could, she cursed the ground there, I think is what it was.
I think something around there. Well, let's start off with that was an actual real person. She didn't live in that house. She was actually a neighbor. And she was, I believe, executed or charged for murder. Um, and people rumored that she was a witch. Any child that she took care of, they didn't live, past the age of 6, I believe. And the smallest child, right, they ended up finding a needle pin in the back of the neck. So that's where they ended up grabbing that inspiration from. However, what happened inside the actual house, it's a lot different. Now, again, I'm telling this from base of memory. I could be 100% missing a lot of important details, right? But I believe it basically starts off with I believe the house was basically on a like a civil war battleground. Is that correct?
Are
If
you
I'm
talking about the
remembering,
actual
the actual
house?
house, yeah.
I don't know too much about the actual house, on if I'm being honest.
Okay, I believe I want to say it is because there's a mention of 7 soldiers, right? Now, the family that ends up basically buying this house and that everything ended up occurring was the parent family, right? And a lot of creepy stuff ended up happening, right? It started off very small, where, like, like a couple items kept missing or like a couple items kept moving, and it started turning into more serious type stuff, where the wife was basically waking up with scratches all over her body, where she would end up seeing shadow figures, and she would talk about 7 soldiers that she would constantly see. Now, again, I might be skipping quite a bit, but what I do remember hearing is that, again, they ended up contacting the Warrens, and basically, when they ended up getting there, right, they tried, I forget what they tried to do.
Well, though I had heard that they had already had exorcists, mediums, and demonologists come through,
Okay.
and before the Warrens even showed up, because I definitely know that there was other people that had been to the house. I don't know if it was before, after, or both, in accordance to when the Warrens showed up. But I know the Warrens were not the only ones involved with that house.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Like I said, I might be skipping a couple things here and there, but I do remember hearing that when the Warrens ended up getting there, right? Lorraine did something where she ended up getting thrown against the wall, and just a bunch of items started flying everywhere. Now, the husband for the Poirot family, I feel like I'm saying that so wrong. I apologize if I am saying that wrong. But he basically got really, really angry, right? Because he thought you guys are doing something to make him a lot more angrier, right? You're doing like something to them to upset them. So he ended up punching Ed on the face, right? He ended up punching him and kicking them out of the house. Now, I believe this family still lived there for quite some time after that, still in that house, still experiencing all of that. And short, like, I don't know how long ago it was, but this couple ended up buying them. I don't know anything of them or anything, like, things of them, but I do know they own the house now, and they also give tours and stuff like that. And I've seen people talk about basically a woman in a dress that they do see whenever they're, touring this house. People do talk about seeing the 7 soldiers. People talk about children in that house as well. Again, I'm telling a lot of this stuff from memory. If you do really want to know, like, 100%, at your own risk, check it out. Um, but yeah, no, it's like it's an actual house, and I do remember hearing that the movie didn't do it justice.
Yeah, that's what I had heard too. Like, it was actually much more haunted than what the movie portrayed.
Yeah, and the director ended up saying that they couldn't actually do what actually happened because they would never get it green flagged because it was too, I guess, horrifying for a theater. So they had to kind of minimize it quite a bit in order for it to get green flagged by the producers. Or, I'm sorry, the whatever the
The
movie, yeah,
studio.
the studio. So yeah, they basically ended up saying that. So that should give you an idea on, like, how much worse that it is.
Yeah, especially considering that movie is already like touted as one of the scariest movies ever made, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do find them scary, but I also know a lot of people say it's not that scary. But again, I also know those type of people have kind of desensitized themselves from, like, a lot of these, like, scary stuff, right? Or, like,
Right.
you know, like, actual real videos are the thing that will actually creep them out. But
Right.
yeah. That's basically, you know. But I do agree they do tend to be very very scary though, and I do give them props on like the whole entire, you know, I guess universe you should say that they end up creating, right? I haven't watched that many of them, but like I said, Annabelle's one of my favorite movies. But I have seen The Conjuring. I've only seen part of The Nun, and I believe that's about it. But for them to still be making a lot of movies, a lot of different movies and stuff like that, I, yeah, I gotta give them props, you know?
Well, I know too, like in the movie, the role that Ed and Lorraine played was way over exaggerated from what I had heard. So, from what I had heard, is that, like I said, there was already a bunch of like other like demonologists, priests, people like that that were, investigating the house. I believe I'm pretty sure it was before Ed and Lorraine got involved, but a lot of them, by their accounts, like to simplify it, they said like if there was 99 spirits haunting the house, they got rid of one by the time that they left.
Yeah, no, there's quite a bit of spirits, and I do also believe that like they also ended up finding like bodies like 6 feet under the house as well. I believe it was 5 bodies they ended up finding. They also ended up finding. I could be messing this one up. I'm not 100% sure. Actually, no, no, no. That's a different thing. Never mind, never mind. They did find the bodies, but what I was gonna say it was different. But yeah, they did end up finding, I believe, 5 bodies under the house, 6 feet under, and I think that was from a medium too that came in, and they ended up doing like a whole entire thing around the house and stuff like that.
Aeons.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely different from movies, but still interesting nonetheless.
but still, you know, talking about the Conjuring universe, right? They ended up making another movie. I believe the name of the movie is called "The Devil Made Me Do It."
Yeah, I've heard of that movie.
You've
I
heard
didn't
of that
realize that
movie?
was. Yeah, I didn't realize that was a part of the same like the CCU, the Conjuring
Yeah,
Cinematic
yeah.
Universe.
But okay, so this is also based on an actual thing that ended up happening, and it also ended up involving the Warrens as well. Um, Again, I apologize. I'm telling this from memory, right? If I do miss a couple details here and there, I apologize. But basically, right, to sum it up, this family ended up moving into this house, right? And
Right.
when they ended up moving into this house, this, you know, kid, right, this young boy kept hearing a voice of an old man saying, "Get out," right? "Get out of my house. Leave me alone," right? And at nights, he would end up seeing this. He would describe him as old, but also like kind of like in a demonic figure under, like under a well, right? So he would end up seeing a well, and under that, it would be this thing, and he would still say the same thing: "Get out, get out, leave me alone, leave my place alone," right? And he would tell his parents, and his parents were kind of worried because he's never been the type of kid to, like, you know, joke about things like that. He's also been like really terrified of things, right? But like this
Right.
is to a whole new level where he's, you know, adding details to things. He's, you know, telling them things like that, right? And it finally ended up getting into the house. Now they ended up having a rocking chair, right? And the kid would always see this demonic figure on the rocking chair, and he would tell him, get out, you know, leave my place, leave me alone." And family members would also claim on seeing that rocking chair moving back and forth. And eventually, the kid started acting very strange. He started talking to things that weren't there. And he started being like very disrespectful. And I believe that's when they ended up bringing in the priest, and that priest ended up calling the Warrens. And when they ended up showing up, um, the kid was basically possessed. And they said that it wasn't just one, but it was, I believe, seven. Seven demonic figures that ended up possessing this little boy. And they would end up seeing them levitate, they would end up seeing spin around, and they try to exorcise him. And the kid would plead for help, And there's actually recordings of this, voice recordings of the exorcism taking place. And during the exorcism, I don't recall if it was like the brother or the brother-in-law, right? But he basically couldn't take it anymore because, he was in pain. He loved this kid. And he basically told them, leave him alone. Take me instead. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you invite something in, it's a lot worse to get rid of. And he basically invited all seven of these in. And they basically ended up going from his body onto, the kid's body onto his. And they thought the exorcism worked, right? But I guess it didn't. And the guy ended up killing, I believe it was his landlord and his boss. Again, I apologize if I don't have that right. But I do want to say it was his landlord and his boss. And he was trialed for it. And I do believe that was the very first time that they ended up using demonic possession. Yeah.
As a what you might call it,
as a defense. As a
yeah, there
defense.
we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
And basically, they ended up bringing, again, Ed and Lorraine back. And they ended up, I believe, testifying with them. And they ended up basically doing the exorcism on this chair. Now, this chair is still around. It's in Saks Fagans Museum. And, whatever you want to say about him, that's up to you. But he owns this, right? And he had that exhibit open for a long time, but he had to close it down because people basically would faint around this chair, would projectile vomit around this chair. There would be people, even if they weren't inside that room, if they were underneath the chair or around it, they would basically pass out. So he had to end up basically closing that exhibit just because it was that bad that people just couldn't be around it. And yes, it might have been exercised on that chair, but still might be, some, I don't know what you would call it.
Residual energy.
Yeah, but it's that strong where people would actually pass out.
Well, I mean, if there's 7 entities inhabiting it, who's to say one exorcism got rid of all 7, right?
Right. Like you said with the Conjuring house, they said if there were 99, they might have gotten rid of 1.
Right. So they may have gotten rid of like 1 or 2, maybe even 3, but it's still,
Yeah.
multiple other entities.
And also, we do gotta like kind of split it off, right? The Conjuring house, I believe, is more like spirits. I don't want to say there would be anything else. It could be. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm pretty sure they said there was demonic presences as well.
Okay. I wasn't 100% sure on that, but yeah, no, it's crazy. And yeah, like I said, for those of you who don't know, if you invite something in, it's way worse. That's why people say, don't, like, you make sure that whenever you end up doing the Ouija board, to make sure you actually close that circuit,
and
say goodbye. If you ever end up going to like a haunted place, or you visit a area where you aren't unsure but it's been abandoned for a while, I've also heard people say that you're supposed to say, if there's anything here, you can't follow me home. And you have to be very stern when you say it. You can't be like scared or anything, um, because you don't want something to latch onto you, basically. Um, but yeah, no, that's another thing that creeps me out, bro. And I couldn't believe when I heard that he ended up inviting them in, all seven of them, bro. And again, I could be off on the numbers. It could be more, it could be less. Again, telling this by memory, but still, it was more than one. I can assure you that for sure. But also just seeing that, like, as a kid, right? I can't imagine just seeing something in the chair and nobody believes you, bro, and it's just rocking back and forth.
Right.
That would be terrifying. Even as an adult, if I walked out and I saw something on a chair, no, I'm moving, bro. Good luck. But no, that's I'd like for me, dude. I don't know. Like I don't mess with any of that stuff. I never will, um, or anything like that. And I will give it 100% full respect. On anything that we've talked about here. But yeah, no, dude, it's definitely a crazy story, and it's also crazy that they've kind of made these into movies too. You know,
Right.
and I don't think a lot of people know that they're actually based on like real stories too.
Well, I think because they put the based on a true story thing at the front
Hmm.
of these movies, but I think like the problem with that is that's used just to like such a degree nowadays where it's like a lot of movies will look for one connection to be able to throw that at the beginning uh you know of the movie, uh that it's kind of just lost its meaning to a certain extent. And like, yeah, it was definitely embellished from what the reality of the situations were, but at the same time I'd say it's a lot more true than like the other movies that use the based on a true story moniker.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that.
I mean, for me personally, it's not like I don't believe in, like, I definitely believe in it, but I don't get as like, I don't know, I guess concerned would be the word I use about it like you do, because it's like, to me it's like, I know I'm not gonna say anything disrespectful because I don't know whether or not it's true or not. um But also, it's just like, to me, if there is anything out there that like negative or, demonic, whatever you want to call it, if there truly is, like, the last thing that you'd actually want to do is, be fearful of it, because that's what, it's looking for.
Yeah, no, and that's 100% true though. That is.
So, like, for me, it's just like, yeah, it could be, it could not, but, I'm not going to, say anything disrespectful about any of it or whatever. But at the same time, I'm also not gonna intrinsically just believe it. It's something I feel like I'd have to experience myself, but also at the same time, it's like I don't necessarily, if it is true, I don't want to in any way, shape, or form be associated with that kind of, entity, presence, energy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. But again, like, I'll be respectful. I still believe in it. But yeah, no, it's kind of crazy.
B, hello, B. No, everyone's gonna believe we just made you up and that you're not actually here right now.
Hello?
She's typing in chat. Oh, she's saying that she lost her voice. So I guess B will not be joining us for this podcast.
Yeah. So the next one that I mentioned, right? Looking at the time, it might end up being the last one. Unless you have a different one afterwards, right? But the next one is a Dibbit box. Do you know you've heard of them, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it is. I've definitely heard of it. I just I'm not really remembering what it is.
So if I'm remembering this correctly, right, you might want to look this up because I think you can. Um, a Dibbit box is basically, in I believe in Jewish folklore, it's a spirit, a wandering spirit that gets trapped into this box, or gets put into this box, sometimes it can end up being something, I believe, demonic as well, right? But you can, believe it or not, buy these off of eBay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, dude, that kind of stuff, like, like it's those like deep web mystery boxes. That's just like, a lot of that's probably just people trying to make a quick buck.
It
You know
could
what I
be.
mean?
It could be. Again, I'm not gonna mess
Well,
with it. I'm not gonna
because
try to prove it wrong, right?
you can buy quote unquote like haunted box.
Yeah, that's true. But again, I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm not gonna try to find out, right? But
Oh,
basically,
wow, that's a really weird spelling. That was not how I thought it was spelled. So it's a specific type of spirit. It's a malicious possessing spirit, believed to be the dislocated soul of a dead person. It supposedly leaves the body once it's accomplished its goal, sometimes after being exorcised.
yeah. So that's basically it. The most famous one is again in Sachs Vegas Museum. The way that basically it's told about this, right, is that a woman that ended up surviving the Holocaust ended up bringing it from Germany to the United States, and she kept it with her, and she gave it, I believe, to her son, her daughter. I'm not 100% sure which one it was, but she gave it to them, and they ended up noticing that, wow, this thing is, there's something here, right? And I believe she ended up selling it to somebody, and that person also ended up noticing that anything, anyone near it or anything like that, they would end up sensing really, strong negative energy from this box. They would either pass out or faint. Some people would even start talking in tongues, I believe. Again, don't quote me on that last one. Um, but I believe he ended up burying it, and he knew exactly where it was. And but again, nobody around it was safe. So he ended up finding Zach, and I believe he ended up giving it to him. And a lot of people say that whenever they go into that museum and they go into that room, they can feel, they can feel the negative energy. Some people have claimed to even see a shadow behind it, right? And it is also unknown on how many spirits are in this box. A lot of people say it's more than just one. It can be multiple of them. But there was actually a story that Post Malone ended up telling, that he ended up going to, his museum. He was showing them around, and I guess Zach wanted to do something with the Dybbuk box, right, and show him. So he opened it and he touched the box, and when Zach touched the box, he froze, just completely froze. And Post like just got scared, right, and like, I guess, touched him, right, and it broke something. And I guess Zach went all the way up against the wall, and like kind of like really like scared, right? And there's a video also of them, like, like that actually happening, and him like both of them just ran out of the room, right?
Right.
Now, if you open the box, I believe, you let him out. I don't know if like closing it puts him back in. I'm not 100% sure. But what was crazy about it is that after that happened, within a month, Post Malone almost died quite a bit of times, multiple
Oh,
times, twice,
I
I
think
believe.
I think I've heard him tell his story. Post Malone. I think I've heard him tell his story
Yeah,
before.
where his plane almost crashed. He was in a really bad, terrible car accident, and I believe his home was marked for home invasion within the month of that. After that, experiencing that, the box was open. And I gotta say, that is crazy, bro.
Right.
Um, if people want to say it's coincidence or whatnot, sure. but for it to like, happen that quick too, and multiple all at once is I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I definitely believe in this kind of stuff, but like with anything in general that I haven't experienced directly or has like, irrefutable proof, in my opinion, crazier coincidences have happened. I'm not saying it isn't real, but it's just like for me, it's like for a lot of this stuff, I feel like it's very much like also very tied to the person that it happens to, because I think like we do have the ability, whether we're like cognitive like consciously aware of it or not, to like make things happen around us, and stuff like that, and attract like that kind of attention to ourselves. So like I kind of sort of the same thing, not really, but like a more simplistic example of like what I'm kind of talking about is like I realized in like high school, if I like woke up in the morning thinking I was gonna have a bad day, my day was gonna be bad regardless of what happened. You know what I mean? So it's like
Kind of energy
part
you put out is what you end up receiving, type of thing.
right. So it's also like, okay, I interacted with this object that I've been told, has this negative thing in it. So is there really anything in there, or am I just, myself expecting negative things to become of this, and then it happens to me?
Right, right.
So it's like, again, I'm not saying it is or isn't real. I'm just saying I I I believe in this stuff, but I don't believe in it. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't believe in it. Like, God, wow. I am. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, blindly. I don't blindly believe in it.
Yeah, okay. No, it makes sense. And I believe I said this before where it's like it would be kind of interesting to, kind of take a group, right? Where some people don't know about, what they're about to see or what they're about to walk into. Others do, right? And you kind of have them walk in individually and kind of see their experience, like uh, see how much it is like, built up in somebody's head, right? From like knowing, the history of the object or the history of the the place, right? And people that
Right.
don't know, right? And just see like, kind of compare. I don't know if it's actually ever been like, done before or anything like
I'm
that.
sure it has. I know I've seen plenty of like videos where like skeptics go to these places, but they're like very much still aware of like the, tales of those places. They're not like completely, blind to the stories or and what have you. But I'm sure at this point, with especially in recent years, the growing popularity in this kind of stuff, that someone at some point probably took, their friend that knew nothing about somewhere there to see, what would happen.
Yeah, that could be it too. I'm also sure they've taken like mediums out, and
Oh,
asked them what they ended up
100%.
seeing, right? Things like
Yeah.
that. Um, but yeah, no, bro. Do you have anything else to add? I don't even know what to say, dude. I do want to
Um,
say that you know,
don't
I've
buy antique furniture.
I've told these stories based off memory. I 100% apologize if I missed a detail or if I end up telling them incorrectly. Um, but I did tell them based off memory. I've heard
His
them.
memory is not good.
Yeah, I've heard them, here and there. Some more recent than others, but yeah, just I definitely did tell a lot of this by memory. Which one was your favorite story?
I like the one that you told at the very beginning, just because I like those kinds of like I'm more inclined to believe those like interactions that you have with people that tell you about stuff like that happened to them or a family member
Hmm.
or something that they're a third party to.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have a reason to lie to you. They don't have a
Right.
reason, versus like these massive, shows that are like trying to get views. You're not trying to sell movies, you're not trying to sell a book. I don't know, like kind of sort of related to like the same vein as like the Conjuring house. You know about like the Amityville horror and all that, right?
No.
So basically it was a house. It was in New York. I want to say it was like on Long Island or somewhere near New York, right? And it was a relatively well-off family, if I remember correctly, and it was a couple kids and then the parents. And then one night, one of the kids, one of the older boys, just shot the entire family dead in their sleep, and then I believe he,
Oh, wait, I think I have heard
unalived
of
them.
this.
Yeah, so you might have, because I almost want to say they made a Conjuring, cinematic universe movie regarding to it, because the Warrens did actually investigate that place. It was only very briefly. I believe they only stayed one night, and actually the only like evidence they had of any kind of activity in that house came from that one night the Warrens spent in there. There was a picture that I believe had a small child in it that had a striking resemblance to one of the children that was killed in the house. But the thing is I believe it was like nobody really talked about the house being haunted until there was one family that moved in. And then that's when all like the media presence of it being like a haunted by, I think they were trying to say it was a demonic, possession of the house. And that what had happened is a demon had possessed this son that and made him kill the whole family. Um, all of a sudden, like there's this story that was spun by the dad of this family that had recently moved into the house, and like everybody just kind of like nobody really questioned it, like nobody, and that's when like the Warrens and a bunch of other like demonologist priests, things like that came in. Well, then later on down the line, like as the kids got older, they were like, yeah, all this stuff, like he was their stepdad. He's like, all this stuff our stepdad was talking about, like none of us ever experienced or saw anything remotely similar to it. And then also like he was kind of hard on money at the time. Like things weren't that great. He needed money and he had his buddy who was an author, and he was the one that helped him like publish the book that kind of like blew this all up. So like there's a lot of people now that just think that like all that was a hoax by this one dude to try and get some money.
Right, okay. Wait, sorry. This was the one where like he ends up murdering everybody in the house with an axe, right?
No, no, no. I believe it was with a rifle.
Oh, a rifle? Okay. Because I do remember hearing a story like that with like an axe now. And people were like, how did he end up like killing everybody in the house with like an axe? Like you would have ended up like, somebody would have heard or yelled, right? But no, okay, yeah, no, that's wild though. And I mean, yeah, but I also know of a lot of places too that have, like the street had to have been,
Yeah,
the
it
name
was it was
change and stuff like
it
that.
was shot. Yeah,
It
he
was shot.
shot six family members. In Amityville, which was on Long Island, New York.
Oh,
Oh, he
okay.
didn't. He didn't unalive himself. He just died in 2021. He was
Oh, wow.
sentenced to 6 terms of 25 years to life in prison. But yeah, no, I just know a lot of the family as they got older, a lot of the kids came out and said like, yeah, none of this happened. Like none of us experienced anything like this in the time we were living there.
Uh, but I do know for a lot of places they also had to like change the name of the house because a lot of people would
Right,
end up
right.
going in there. I think
Yeah.
especially for like murder houses.
Yeah. Well, because like I know that there are a lot of people that are turned off from that, and that's why a lot of times houses that have any kinds of deaths in them are generally sold substantially below like market value. But there is also, especially like I said, nowadays with the kind of craze for this stuff, there's definitely people that want to live in those kinds of houses and places.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I don't think I ever would want to though. Like I don't know. Like I believe we've talked about this where or I think I've mentioned it to you. Um where like I believe like some items might hold like memories and stuff like that.
Right. That's why I said don't buy antique furniture.
Yeah.
Well, and then in like demonology and with ghosts and everything, there's like one of the distinct difference between like demons and like entities and ghosts is like demons can lie, entities can lie, ghosts cannot lie because a lot of people believe that ghosts are just like impressions of energy that are left behind by, humans, you know. And so they don't lie because they're not like there's no like the way that people describe there's no soul attached to it. It's just simply an energy impression left behind. So that's why I think like once I think even with like the Annabelle doll, the reason that they realized that they were dealing with a demon was, oh, this alive, this is not this child that it said it was. This has to be a demon. It can't be a ghost because it lied.
Right. Right. Also, it was
Which means
because more than likely because it attacked too, right?
um I I don't know about that so much. It's just in all the stuff I've watched about like demons and demonology, like that's just a big thing is like if the thing you're talking to is lying, it is probably some kind of demon or some kind of entity that's not a ghost. This is not something that was ever human kind of thing.
How would you
Like that's a
know if they're lying though?
that's the thing. You'd have to either just have context to certain information beforehand or it admits that it lies. It had lied because if it, and in some cases, I believe in communication with these entities, they have admitted like, oh, I lied, and at that point, that's when you're not dealing with anything that is or ever was human.
B, what would you think? What was your favorite story?
All of them.
Oh, she actually said something.
Oh, nice. But if you had to pick one though,
Um, the rocking chair.
oh, the Devil's
Oh,
Rocking Chair. Okay.
Do you
No.
believe there's true stories?
um, what?
Did you get scared? That would be
No,
no. Okay.
Um,
But
do you believe in this kind of stuff, B?
no.
All right, we found our friend to go to haunted places for science reasons.
yeah.
You
Huh?
like abandoned asylums?
Huh?
You just gotta fly to Canada
For what?
to check out abandoned asylums.
We're all
Oh,
over the U.S. too.
No.
damn, dude! You're trying to do a Outlast video? Nah, I'm good. I played the game. That's good enough for me. I ain't
I mean,
trying to get trapped.
for me, that's different. You're talking about a place that just had a mass amount of like negative energy constantly attributed to it. Like that's gonna be like more residual energy left from humans. I mean, obviously you
Yeah.
can attract things, but
Right. But yeah, no, still that'd be I don't know, bro.
there's one not that far from us.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you though. Appreciate it. Good looking out. Um yeah, just take a tripod, blur out our faces and go in. Hey
Yeah, I'm good.
everybody, welcome to Chaos and Ghost Hunting.
Today we're shooting the podcast on location with some first-hand accounts. Hopefully we'll get some.
Yeah, no, I'm good. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to say?
Don't buy antique furniture.